So, why does believing God not make sense? Believing God doesn't make sense because sometimes God provides, but the situation remains the same. Believing in God doesn't make sense because He will give you a vision for actual things that He has planned to take place in your life and then leave you sitting in their absence. It doesn't make sense because sometimes you want microwave popcorn and you don't have a microwave. Because oftentimes when you are walking upright, your reward is silence. It doesn't make sense because nobody will ever get you like God gets you. Yet He's the last person we typically turn to. Serving God doesn't make sense because He will show us glimpses of our future, knowing the next screen that we see is going to be static. It doesn't make any sense because His one relationship requirement is that we replace our need to understand with trust. It's like pouring water on an eternal flame. You never know when your present reality is going to become history. You don't know when you'll finally be able to say, temporary is over. The promise I have stepped in is now eternal. You don't know when it is your time to inhabit the land flowing with milk and honey. All you know is that He promised it to you. It doesn't make any sense because the perfect, pure, matchless, and righteous God who searched the heavens for someone that was better than Him and then said, okay, that's fine. If there's nobody better, I'll take over. It doesn't make any sense because He sent His Son to be brutally murdered by some wannabe A-lister Pharisees and will never be able to repay Him for that. It also doesn't make any sense that He doesn't ask us to repay Him for that. Except He kind of does. And it's in the waiting. And I don't know what it was like on the cross, but I'm pretty sure it still isn't a fair trade. It doesn't make any sense to serve or believe God because it seems like when all I want is just a little bit of clarity, I get more clouds. And the clouds obstruct my view of the sun, but they don't obstruct my knowledge of His presence behind them. Well, that's it. 10 reasons I believe that believing in God, it doesn't make sense. As a Christian believer, a kid who grew up in the church and still goes to church and loves the Lord, I believe that believing in God doesn't make sense. But that, in and of itself, doesn't make sense. Me believing in God, but also believing that believing in God doesn't make sense. How do I make sense of this? I don't. Actually, I don't make sense of this. Why? Well, because God makes sense.